Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/Pro Revenge. Our first story on why companies should pay a small fee for new equipment because they might lose their data forever. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Don't want backups? Okay then. So I'm by no means an expert at network engineering, but I am an engineer who works on networks for very large oil and gas plants. Well, a friend works at a small company, and they asked me to help with getting their data accessible via the internet. Because it's a close friend, I said sure and called the owner to talk specifics. Come to find out, they have exactly one hard drive that gets passed around to store all employee company data on it. I told him that was insane, and he needs redundant backups both here and at a third-party site in case a fire destroyed everything. I gave the cheapest option I could that was basically just to buy 2 NAS systems off Amazon and the drives for them. Would have cost maybe $500. He would keep one at the office and one at his house. I could set them up to auto backup, plus the employees could have an online shared drive that they could dump files into over the internet. He immediately said that $500 was way more than he could afford for this type of thing and just told me to get the current drive online. I repeatedly told him this is the worst possible thing you can do, but he didn't care. So I just plugged the drive into their router and set up the computers to be able to access it. I sent a CYA email to him and never looked back. So that was about a year ago, and now my friend sends me a series of frantic texts saying they lost the drive and if I know how to recover data from a formatted drive. I say no, but there are companies that can, but it might be expensive. For whatever reason, they call an actual IT company to do something, and he accidentally formatted their OneDrive and lost everything from the past 15 plus years. Now the owner is furious with me, and since I don't work for him, nor do I have an IT company, I just said, "I told you so," and hung up. People shouldn't be thinking, do I want to spend dollars on this maintenance/backup/safety thing? They should be thinking, do I want to spend dollars when the catastrophe this maintenance/backup/safety thing is supposed to prevent happens? And our second story. Send in a shoddy application and tell me to just make do? You got it. I work for an agency that specializes in disaster relief. I'm basically a professional nitpicker, and it works like this. When a town or city or some other place suffers some kind of disaster and want to get reimbursed for damages and repair expenses and the like, they contact us and send in an application. This application has to include certain kinds of documents in order to be eligible for any funding, and some of those documents have to be laid out a certain way. For example, if you have to hire a bunch of laborers to help clear debris or something, you have to tell me who worked how many hours on which day, how much they were paid per hour, how much they were paid in total, that sort of thing. If your application gets to me and doesn't have all the bells and whistles, one of 3 things happens. Your application is rejected, your application is sent up the chain minus whatever I can't validate, meaning you get less money than what you were originally asking to be reimbursed for, or I send it back to you to be reworked. I usually do everything I can to avoid the first 2 because I know how hard it can be to recover from a disaster when you have to pay for stuff out of your own pocket. But today, I made an exception, courtesy of some good old-fashioned malicious compliance. So I get this new project. It lands on my desk with a thud. It's an application from a small rural town of only a few hundred people that was heavily damaged by severe rains and flooding. Trees knocked over, power lines destroyed, you name it. They got hit real bad and had to hire a lot of people to help clean up afterwards. And they're still applying for over $20,000 in reimbursements. Anyway, I'm parsing through it, going over my checklist, making sure everything is in order. About 5 seconds in, I realized that whoever put this garbage pile of a project together either didn't know what they were doing or didn't care enough to find out. Shoddy or missing paperwork, broken files, incoherent notes and add-ons, you name it. So I make a list of all the things that are wrong with the project and call up the project supervisor. In other words, the guy the town hired to put the application together to see if he and I could work together to fix them. I tell him that I won't be able to validate the project for the full dollar amount with what I've been given, but the guy cuts me off, calls my competence, intelligence, and professional integrity into question, accuses me of trying to stiff the town, and calls me several choice names. He ends by saying I'd better make do with what I've been given and that it's not his job to do anything more than what he's already done. I'm PO'd, but I hang up the phone and go to talk to the boss. I ask the boss what I should do. I already knew what he was going to say, but I wanted to make sure I covered all my bases. Sure enough, he sympathizes, tells me to validate whatever costs I can and ignore the rest. I tell him that doing so will result in a drastic reduction in the amount of money the town receives. He tells me that it's not the agency's problem if the project supervisor refuses to cooperate. I go back to my desk and do exactly as the boss instructed. I validate what costs I can and ignore the rest. I damn well will make do with what the project supervisor has given me, just like he said. It amounts to a little over $5,000. I double-check my work, then triple-check it before kicking it up the chain for final review. The whole project was done and dusted by lunchtime. I also know I'm going to get an earful from the project supervisor, and I'm not disappointed. Around 2 in the afternoon, I get a call from him, and as soon as I pick up, he starts ranting at me. As soon as he does, I call the boss over. I tell him that my boss is on the line, and the boss basically tells the guy that it's his own stupid fault. The project supervisor doesn't care and continues to scream at me. He says that I'm trying to cheat him by leaving out the missing funds. When he finally pauses because he has time to breathe, I smile and tell him that he'll just have to make do with what I've given him and that it's not my job to do anything more than what I've already done. I hang up before he can say anything else. Then I call up the guy at the town city hall who hired the project supervisor to let him know what happened and exactly who to blame. And since small-town gossip spreads faster than the bubonic plague, I bet you anything that the project supervisor will find himself on the receiving end of the entire town's hatred by this time tomorrow. And he deserves it. And our last story. Boss ends up regretting it. I used to work in a convenience store, and the store manager was a real jerk. Misogynistic, offensive, as in, haha, cancer is hilarious. Creepy, and a downright bully. Sometime after I left, he was fired after he decided to turn a professional interview with a young woman into a conversation about her favorite adult video. She reported him, and he got the sack. Awesome. Anyway, this guy, we'll call him Andy, fancied himself as a real leader. I mean, he wasn't. He set impossible tasks and yelled instructions while doing absolutely nothing in the office in the meantime. I had a colleague called Gabby who, TBH, I didn't get on with. However, I knew that at the time she was having a really tough time at home with her 3-month-old son. One day in the winter, it had snowed fairly heavily. Gabby rang in that morning and told Andy she couldn't make it as she was snowed in. Everybody knew that wouldn't have been true and that it was likely she hadn't slept well with the baby crying and whatnot. But you know what? Who cares? She always worked hard and she deserved a break. It was only a 4-hour shift and the store was dead anyway. No customers were going to walk over snow and ice for the morning paper. Plus, we were actually overstaffed. However, Andy had a problem with women. He was always disrespectful and demeaning. Like the rest of us, he knew she wouldn't be snowed in, but he didn't let it lie. He wanted to catch her out. Andy abandoned the store, serious gross misconduct, and got in his car. He made the 15-minute drive all the way to Gab's house and took pictures of her car, her front driveway, and the rest of the street to prove she wasn't snowed in. He then called her into the office at the end of the week for a disciplinary. When she came out, she was in tears. She was on a final warning. Andy wouldn't want a dismissal on his quarterly record, so he basically just threatened her instead. This didn't sit well with anybody. We hated him anyway, but he went too far, making a single mom cry over something so ridiculous. Well, here's the good part. What Andy didn't realize was that on the last work night out, he had drunkenly revealed to the team that he was a serial cheat. He would regularly cheat on his wife of 18 years. He also has 2 teenage sons. He would justify it as having natural male hunger, if you ever heard a more disturbing quote. Andy used to tell his wife that in the evening he finished at 11 o'clock. This was a lie. He never worked later than 9 o'clock. After his evening shift, he went and slept with his mistress. Well, one evening he finished at 9 o'clock and he got in his car and started driving. What he didn't realize was that Gab, who wasn't on shift that day, had dropped her son at her mom's house and had waited outside the store in her car for Andy to leave. She tailed his car all the way to his hookup house and parked 3 houses down. She then proceeded to take pictures of Andy hugging and kissing this random woman before pulling her inside and slamming the door. You can see where this is going. Andy didn't come into work for a week. When we saw him next, he looked broken. His wife had been anonymously sent the pictures of him getting off with another woman. She'd kicked him out and had contacted a solicitor to start a divorce process. His sons had blocked his number and wanted nothing to do with him. Of course, he knew who sent the pictures, but he had no proof, no evidence. Gabby stayed at the store for another 3 months before moving into a recruitment position for a pharmaceutical company. As far as I know, she's still there today and doing well. As for Andy, I have no idea whether the divorce went through or not. I blocked him on all social media after I left the company, about a month after this whole thing. What I do know is that he's a disgusting, reprehensible human being who thought he was invincible. He thought he could walk all over people, bullying and belittling as he went. Well, he soon realized that nobody is invincible, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching his collapse. Karma, it's like a boomerang. It goes one way, then on the way back, it smacks you upside the head, and he got one hell of a whack upside the head. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.